All right, folks, before today's episode, we have an awesome announcement to make.
Yep, we are teaming up with Holtz Leather Company, and we are going to do a really cool giveaway. And if you guys want to get in on that, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook. You'll see all the details there and how you can get entered into that.
So, and we just want to give a big shout out to Holtz. They've been an awesome company to work with. They've actually created the hats that we've come out with recently. And not only have they created a great product, but they also are a great family-owned and run business that has been incredibly encouraging, and we really like the work they're doing.
Welcome to Venator Chronicles Podcast. I'm Ethan Taylor.
And I'm Dustin Jelly.
Our hope is to inspire new and old hunters alike.
We hope you can join us on this journey of lessons that we have, are, and will learn through the world of hunting.
First of all, let's maybe just say who's here. Okay, so we have Seth Taylor in-house. Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.
Yeah, thanks for coming all the way.
Thanks for having me.
For North Dakota. There you go. That's nice. Hey, Seth, why don't you keep that mic about a fist away from your mouth? Thanks. And then Reuben Downey, who is the fourth wheel, just kind of ended up showing up
I feel like
here.
it, yeah. That's great. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Reuben's a pilot, so if you guys fall asleep to his voice, that's pretty normal.
If it comes across that he doesn't know anything about hunting, it's because he's a pilot. He doesn't know anything about hunting.
We just got done talking about the deer he passed up not too long ago,
After
right?
dark.
Yeah.
I passed up a bunch of deer last year because I wasn't in my stand, but I got some pictures. And then, yeah.
Well, okay, so Reuben, you actually, you had mentioned you passed up this deer, but you also saw the red light on your camera go off.
Well, it was one of those situations when, as you're bow hunting, it's, I hunt down in Kentucky, so you don't have snow on the ground to back it up. So you look at your phone when shooting light over. I was hunting in a kind of a swampy area, pretty dark. It's straight up, like it's hard to shoot, at legal shooting light in a dark swamp like that. So
the swamp is darker, huh?
Yeah, it was dark. It was pretty dark to see. But anyway, it was past shooting light. So I'm getting ready to get out of my stand. Here's how the situation went. I know. Yeah.
Go ahead, Reuben. Please tell us the story. Seth will collaborate.
It's so hard not to talk over you.
It is. But here's the story. So I'm sitting in my deer stand. Nice night. Evening comes. It's end of shooting light. You know how it goes. You lower your bow down to the bottom of the tree. And then you hear that crunch. You're like, come on, man. I was just about to get down my side. So I'm sitting there. Here comes a doe walk by. A little 6-pointer comes by. I can see him. Like, okay, let him pass. Don't want to get down. Don't want to scare him. Pretty close to a bedding area.
Wise.
All of a sudden, grunt. Oh, man, something big is coming through the woods. And it was too dark to see. So he's coming in. And I see him walk by where my trail camera is. I can see the red light flash. I'm like, at least I got a picture of him. That's cool. All of a sudden, he comes right underneath my tree. Stands underneath my tree. And I'm like, oh, he's got a big rack. I couldn't quite tell. So I wouldn't say I passed him up. Yes, it was a few minutes after shooting the night. But I'm sitting there just watching this deer. He walks off. I go down, pull up my my SIM card, get home, and like I showed you guys, like this thing right there.
That little dinker.
Yeah,
we'll post it on Instagram.
Yeah,
we'll let people know how small that deer was.
It was exciting. It made me come back to the area.
But what I think is interesting is that it was after you saw the picture that you decided you passed on it. Is that right?
Truth.
This is truth. Yes, this is truth.
Truth.
Beautiful. Speaking about passing deer, that was actually something we were talking about quite a bit out in the parking lot before we came in here. I think hunting standards is probably the thing we've been talking about the most tonight. So maybe we'll just keep rolling with that. So feel free to repeat yourselves if you feel like you need to. That is one thing I know for me going into this next season. I am being the second season. I have no idea how I'm actually gonna like set where my bar is at, because the 8-pointer isn't huge, and then also like a lot of the areas I'm gonna plan on going to is kind of like hunt and scout at the same time, because I just haven't had a lot of time to scout yet. And I have like 3 trail cameras, and please don't punch me, only 2 are out right now, and so it's just like, all right, it's just going to be scouting a lot of different areas in public land. So I guess, how do you guys figure out how to set those standards for the coming seasons, and when do you adjust those?
Well, I think you're just starting out. So you've got, like you said, you've got like a year into it, right?
Yeah.
So you've got
Archery, yeah.
Yep. You've got some time in the stand. You've got some hours on your trail cameras, and you've got like one prior year. I mean, you hunt several years, like as you're hunting year after year, I think you'll learn that your standards change by the caliber deer you see. So if there's areas like you're talking about now, you've only seen so many deer, right?
Yep.
You've only had so many deer on trail camera.
Yep.
So how are you supposed to set a standard when you don't know what's there? So at least for me, standards have come from what are the possible deer I have the ability to shoot, because it's like okay, my standard's a 12-pointer. I don't have one on trail camera. I didn't see one like last year, and now my standard is to shoot a 12. Well, maybe you have like a good 8-pointer on there, and so you set a realistic standard of I'm going to try and find this deer. I'm going to try and shoot that deer, and that's your standard for the year. But I know for me, it's changed as I've seen the different caliber deer and been able to shoot different caliber deer. That's kind of, so it takes years. I would think even if you're shooting deer or not, each year it could even change by what you see come by your camera or what you see from observation sits or driving. I don't know,
Well, and I think that's where, for me, I feel a little bit behind because I have one trail camera photo of, I think it was a really nice 8 from last year, but it's in an area I know there's like 5-6 people that hunt it.
Yeah,
And so, but it made it through the season. And so there's like that one camera there. And then I know that would be worthwhile, but I just know there's a ton of hunting pressure there. And so for me, like, I'm looking at it with the pursuit in mind of not what do I have already established, because it's such a small portfolio. It's more like, what can I go find? And it happens to be hunting season. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah. And you're going to feel behind
Forever.
No, but the thing about it is, of course you feel behind. You don't have 5 years into all these spots.
Right.
You don't have hours and days and months into these spots.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely 100% natural for you and anybody else who's hunting to feel like, oh, I don't have all these spots picked out. I don't have all these big bucks picked out. I don't, all these things. That's because it takes years. It's not something you go out and do one season and you're like, okay, I've got 5 different bucks here, 5 different bucks here. I have great stands here. Here's all the wind conditions in this area. Here's all the stand locations in this area. That's something that comes over hunting that location, spending time there. So it's perfectly normal to feel like you're behind, but you just have to understand the position you're at.
Do you guys ever find like you're changing your standards mid-season?
Yeah.
Like just depending on how it's going?
Yeah. So for me, like Seth said, what do you have the opportunity to shoot in that area? For me, so I hunt in Kentucky. I hunt public land in Kentucky.
And you just started there, right?
Yeah, I've been hunting that public land spot for 3 years now.
Okay.
And just starting to get an idea of what's in there. But there's a pretty decent amount of hunting pressure. It's 8,000 acres. It's bow only, which is awesome.
Uh-huh.
The rifle hunters don't get in there. It doesn't get pressured quite so bad. But when I'm starting out, I've got some pretty good trail camera pictures, have an idea what's in there, and my standards are pretty high. I'll pass a lot of bucks early season.
Yeah.
As it gets colder, as the time gets, I mean, I'm just being real with you. As the season goes on, and rut, of course, everybody you like to wait around for rut. I'll keep my standards pretty high through the rut, but then after season, I'll be honest with you, my standards go down. Mm-hmm. My time gets less. I don't want to burn up buck tag. I didn't shoot a buck last year. I passed up a few. Got late season, and I didn't shoot a buck last year.
Were you ready to just take about anything at that point?
Well, here's the thing. If I shoot about anything, I got to answer to Seth over here. Okay, so you got to keep that in mind.
No.
I'm not going to shoot something that's so small. Like I'm not proud of it, but I'm not going to hold out for a 140-inch deer. Like if a 125-inch 8-pointer walked by, I would have shot it.
Yeah, but here's a question, okay? Here's a question. If you have an opportunity to shoot a 125-inch buck, are you proud of that buck? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
At this
Yeah.
stage, okay,
Yeah.
all right, because that's what matters, I guess. Because as we all set our own standards, was what's in the area, what time of year it is, what
Yeah.
I think there's something to be said too. Maybe, like I would shoot a doe. I would rather shoot a doe, and hopefully next year maybe find that deer.
Well, it's
you
true.
know he's in an area.
And especially if you have private land and you're trying to hey, I'm just going to shoot a mature buck and I'm going to let the young ones grow, which is really smart, especially if you have land you're going back to every year. Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, that's where it's been kind of cool. I hunt someplace nearby the in-laws' house.
Where's
and-
that at exactly?
Yeah, you'd like that. No, but I've let go. I for the first time ever, I think I mentioned it last time. For the first time ever, I actually passed on a deer, and it happened to be a couple bucks. And it was like I actually saw them this year. Like, I'm serious. What?
You passed a couple deer that were a couple bucks.
Yeah, well, I'm saying like I've never passed on a doe. I've never passed on anything. I was like, oh, it's brown, it's down, outside of spots. And so actually, as I was driving, I saw some of them with velvet on or whatever, and I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of cool. Just having that kind of full circle thing, because I never experienced that. It's like, oh, deer's in range, it's dead, or hopefully dead.
Well, like Seth
If I
said
shoot
too,
right.
about shooting a doe though, like, yeah, you've got one buck tag, keep in mind, and then my wife will start saying, hey, the freezer's getting low, like, I want some meat. I'm like, I don't want to burn my buck tag. I'm not going to burn my buck tag on a small buck.
Yeah.
But I'll shoot a doe and put some meat in the freezer for sure. But it depends on your management situation, if you're trying to manage your land in a specific way or not. So.
Yeah. But I think there's something too where it kind of goes into the mental toughness of also being like out in the winter. At least I think it's a factor, because I encountered it. Even the outing that I did get my buck on, which was the biggest buck I had shot, and I think it was the second one at that point. And even in that stand, that sit that morning, I was like, should I just take a buck with a bow no matter what it is at this point, just so I get full circle? And so I guess even like as you get towards the end of the season, part of it being like there's got to be some mental toughness as well. Like I get what you're saying with it, but then also like, am I just doing this because I don't want to wait? Or is it just like actual convenience or whatever it might be? I don't know.
I think I don't know. Until the last day of season. I mean, Emily, my wife, shot a buck after, I don't know, after 3 dozen hunts. It was end of December, almost January, a week left in the season. And I think it does have to go with mental toughness, because she wasn't going to settle for a small buck, because she set a standard and she really, really wanted to achieve it. And she literally spent days out sub-zero. I'm talking like -18 with no wind chill. Mm-hmm. And she wasn't going to do all that, put in all that, quote unquote, suffer like she did in the stand.
Yeah.
And not end up with the end result that she was hoping to get. And she did it. And it was...
That's rewarding.
Yeah.
But then part of that too is like, I don't have, again, where it comes to, I don't know what's there, because I don't have so I don't know if she had like that expectation of like, we've seen these deer here, we have them on trail cameras, it's something that's semi-regular. Did you guys have that at least? Like in your favor as far as like that snippet of hope?
Maybe a small snippet of hope. She had sat that was the first time she sat that stand. We knew there were deer in the area.
Uh-huh.
But she didn't have a lot of hope, but she was in the right place at the right time, and she had a certain standard and a certain, like, she had already put in so much work and so much time and so much freezing her butt off in the stand that it was like, it's going to be for this specific, it's going to be
like
for
this
this
or nothing?
specific standard or nothing. And it's like,
Yeah.
I think that's a place where you get to once you've shot a couple bucks, I guess. Or I don't know. For some people, I think it comes quick. Took her just 3 years. Maybe other people, it comes after 10 years, or it never comes. I don't know. But that was her deal, So
were you talking about like when you say it comes for people quick, like the size of the buck, or just like actually getting that mentality where it's like it's this or nothing type of mentality?
for her, it was the size of the buck.
Okay.
I
Yeah.
mean, she had killed a buck the prior year that she was super proud of, and she was thrilled with it, and she just wanted,
wanted to beat
see
that?
She wanted to beat it. She
Yeah.
wanted to improve upon what she had already done. So,
Yep.
and she wasn't going to be too thrilled about it unless she did. And that was
Yeah.
her mentality, and that's what it took for her to be in that stand.
Yeah.
And that's part of like, oh, is it about inches or is it not about inches, or all these different things. But sometimes that's what it takes, because when she shot that deer before she even went out that night, I was like, it's 30-mile-an-hour wind. You don't need to go sit in a tree. And she wasn't going to. And then she was like, I'm going.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, wow, you're a bow hunter. Like,
That's awesome.
No, for real.
Yeah.
So I was like, it's freezing cold, and there's, it was terrible. But she was like, no, you know what? If I'm not there, I'm not going to shoot him. And it took her envisioning like a big buck to get her butt in a tree.
Yeah.
And if that's what it takes, it is what it is, you know?
So let's I want to explore that thought of your wife hunting a little bit, because that I think is such a rarity amongst the hunting culture, is that both husband and wife go out together, and that your wife was just going to go out. So did your wife did she hunt before you guys got together, or?
She rifle hunted, and she got to experience freezing in a tree during rifle season back on her parents' property, and I guess her uncle took her out quite a few times growing up. But the bow hunting aspect was I told her that I was going to buy her bow, and here's how the story goes. I told her I was going to buy her bow. She said, kind of, because I realized it was like me going bow hunting, and then absence of her, absence of the family, and it was just like a totally separate thing from like our life, and like that's not going to last. You're not going to you can't serve two masters, whatever, however you want to say it. But I knew she needed to be included in it for it to be an enjoyable experience, for both of us or whatever. So I told her I was going to buy her bow. She said, well, I'm not going to have time. I'm not going to go out. I was like, well, we're going to buy you a bow anyway. If you shoot it, great. If not, we'll target practice, whatever. So bought her a bow. She ended up loving shooting it.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, let's see if we can get you a deer. So we went out, and together we set up a spot for her to hunt. And long story short, her first year, she shot a nice 8-pointer, or a 4x4, as North Dakotans would call it.
Boy.
Yeah. And
This guy.
yeah. And she ended up loving it, first of all, because she gets cold in 60-degree weather.
What?
That's a real thing. I don't know how. Anyways, and she was over the moon. She'd never shot a buck before that I'm aware of. And she was thrilled that she did it. And she was thrilled that we spent the time to go out and do all the scouting together, set up a stand, stuff like that. So yeah, for her to be part of it, and for her to realize that is something that we could do together. And then I don't think she knew how rewarding it was until she shot that deer. And then after that, and he was like, oh, I want to do it again. So
That's awesome.
That's the kind of the story or whatever. And now it's just kind of morphed into kids come out and do it. We do it, shoot the bow range, pictures, like trail cameras, stuff like that.
So, kind of going into say like setting the expectations, especially going into the next year. So for me, like after shooting the 8-pointer, in my mind, I'm going, okay, if I saw like a bigger 8-pointer, wider rack, just seemed like a more mature 8-pointer, I would take that. But what I'm struggling with at the moment is the idea that I have really nothing solid on camera, no solid idea of where something is. And so I might end up in a situation where I'm not seeing any deer as big as I saw the year before. And so it's like, am I going to go set up in an area I'm real familiar with and try to work this one spot out? Or am I going to go, like explore different areas looking for a buck that's that size, that's bigger than the one that I shot before? Do you follow what I'm saying? Like just trying to set realistic expectations, understanding that there's no solid intel for me at this moment of like, oh, I can go here and work on this one buck or whatever it might be. So I'm not sure exactly how to end up setting that expectation going into the next year.
Well, it's hard. I had a couple of years ago, I had a second time out bow stand. I mean, I was still in like scouting phase. I'm getting stands all set up. It was bow season. I was in Kentucky. It was like 85 degrees. I'm getting bit up by mosquitoes. I throw a stand up, I still had a couple hours left. I'm like, man, scent all over the place, but I'm going to go ahead and sit here. And second time out, this mule deer of an 8-pointer walks by. I'm like, oh yeah, that's it. And knowing that when I shoot that thing, I'm done bow hunting that whole season. So it's a tickle hurt, but I'm like, you know what? That's big enough. I'm totally happy with that. So Yeah.
So does that deer set your expectations, even though it was kind of like a?
Oh,
It's just kind of like not totally by chance. Obviously, you had to be there and pick the spot, but at the end of the day, it's like that it wasn't like this year-long process of like, I figured him out and now.
Well, I
like,
didn't
would
have
you shoot
him,
something less than and still feel as proud, maybe?
Maybe. I set my expectations pretty high early in the season. I didn't have him on trail camera, but I had hunted that area the year before that, had some nice bucks on trail camera, and he walked by and I was like, you know what, this is too big of a buck for me to pass up. Even though it's early in the year, too big of a buck for me to pass up. But yeah, man, it just comes down to how much time you have, what's in the area, and it's just way too big for me to pass up that early.
Yeah. And are you guys hunting, like, I know North Dakota, Seth, you got like the rolling hills, and then is it like patches of forest, or what does your guys' situation look like currently, and in Kentucky? Like what kind of...
North Dakota's got us beat. We've got some decent hunting, actually some really good hunting land. Yeah. So like I said, the spot I found, it is public land, but it's 8,000 acres of bow only. They plant soybeans in it, they plant corn, they plant a bunch of stuff, which is awesome. And then they've got some good bedding areas and stuff, but I'm pretty much locked into one area. Yeah.
And so you actually have like farmland and fields and different...
Yeah, farmland, there's some good deer there. There really are, but it's some of the pictures that Seth's got on trail camera are pretty impressive. I mean, I've had quite a few trail cameras out, and we don't have... I'm not saying there aren't some decent quality deer over there, but man, it's not like they've got North Dakota. So that kind of sets the standards a little bit too. Just the potential of the area. These are a couple...
Yeah.
Those are some of the nicest pictures. And what is that, a 140-inch, 150-inch maybe?
Yeah.
And he's got some that are way bigger than that. So it's like, this is what I've got in the area, and that's pretty much what I'm limited to. So I kind of know going into it what I should expect.
We are in totally different worlds. Continue.
Well, I was going to say, too, that, I mean, I have a dozen trail cameras out for 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
And I have the same size deer as that. And I've found a couple here and there, but I would imagine maybe not. If you had 5 years and you had 12 trail cameras and you ran them all year long, that you might pick up some big ones, like, you know what I mean?
And private land, if you can lock in a private land spot, and the same thing with you there, if you can lock in a private land spot, you're way better off.
I'm out of those.
Yeah.
Dude, yeah, I know. I've asked around a bit, but
shot a deer off private land. So.
Seth gotten kicked off his private land recently, so he's a little sour.
My wife got
What?
We got kicked off of. Okay, it wasn't kicked off.
Okay,
Family was gonna be in town.
Oh.
Okay. So I didn't hunt that. She did.
Okay.
That's where she got her last $2.
Oh, really?
Yep.
And now they're like, oh yeah, now that we see what's coming out of there,
we're good with it though. It stretches you. Like, you go from being comfortable in a spot, and getting a general idea, which is like, that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to go to a spot, try and figure out how many deer are there, what's going on there. It was valleys with on the top there was corn the first year, beans the next year. It's perfect for deer. And they come out to the field, you could hit them on their feeding pattern, stuff like that. And then that rug gets pulled out from under you, and you go, okay. First, you cry a little. And then after that, you go, well, this is probably going to test our game, because Emily and I, we hunt a little bit different. I like to get her a little closer to the stand. I like to...
as far as like the walk back?
Yeah, because it's like... You've got time frames. Like, all this hunting a lot of it is relative to how much time you have. Like, some people can go and they can have 150 trail cameras and they have time to check them. They have time to rotate them. They have time to be out there doing that. And then some people don't, So with her and us, like, going back and forth watching kids and stuff like that, it's like we only have so much time. There's only so much daylight, and especially when it gets to the late in the year, you're like 5 o'clock shooting light. So yeah, we set up stuff a little different from her, and I like to walk. Like, if I don't have to, I'm not going to, but I like to go for a walk, throw a stand on my back, and look for deer in areas I haven't hunted yet.
Yeah, I think that's part of the challenge. I'd be interested in what your guys is, because I know obviously almost all of us grew up in Wisconsin except for Dusty.
Hallelujah.
Loser.
So I guess because it seems like you guys have learned a lot. Maybe not Reuben at all. But Seth seems like you've learned a lot.
I just
oh
want
boy.
to chime in real quick.
Okay, yeah.
You would talk about expectations. Here's how to keep your expectations low. You just keep switching up your weapon system every year.
Oh my.
So I mean, I hit that buck last year with the compound. I'm good. I'm gonna go recurve this year. So if it doesn't have spots, it's mine, and I'm gonna feel pretty good about it.
Is that where you're at going into this year?
Heck yeah.
Oh, I did not realize
Heck
that.
yeah. Oh yeah.
You
Like,
need to
it's
find
the
a
same
deer
thing.
to miss,
But-
Dusty.
Oh, I don't miss deer. I just don't recover deer.
Oh.
Yeah.
Are you-
Thanks
so-
for bringing that up. That,
Are you taking
It's not
any
a
buck
secret.
this year? Just because of the not just because, but it's a pretty
Oh.
significant weapon system change.
I'll take a buck. I'm planning
I mean,
on having
any buck. I mean, is
What's that?
like any buck?
Yeah, pretty much any buck. But I
Okay.
plan on having like a number of tags because I'll be hunting in Wisconsin and Minnesota. In the area, one area in Minnesota is an intensive harvest, so I got a buck and 2 does
Nice.
to maximize that area.
That
So
would be pretty sweet.
yeah, plus other areas. So I'm hoping to take a number of deer, but the size of them, we'll see.
Yeah. Well, and you got the trad bow, so
Yeah.
we'll see what happens.
Struggle sick life.
We'll see what happens.
Does his wife know he'll be doing this much hunting?
I'm planning on efficiency.
Oh my goodness.
Efficiency. Haven't found the deer yet. I'm gonna go kill him right away.
I keep getting the feeling that as soon as he kills with one weapon system, he changes it so he has an excuse in
Next
case
year,
the next
the
year,
slingshot.
the next year, the next 3 years,
Yeah, I was saying,
just go
it only took me
terrible.
3.
Yeah. But going into like, we've grown up in Wisconsin and you guys have learned a lot and you've gone to different states. How would you guys start to break down? Cause this is where I'm going to be at at this very moment. Seth, I've shared some pins with you as far as what I'm looking at. There's like wetlands and my mentality is like, oh, I need to go out where nobody goes and get as deep as I can and just be as miserable as possible to try to find something. How would you approach with what you've learned? How would you approach these areas with limited trail cams? Just limited trail cams.
Me?
Yeah.
I do a lot of
cams.
Buy a lot of trail cams.
First of all, limited trail cams. What is that? I'm just kidding. You got to go out and you got to walk. Like you got to go through these areas. It's still early. I mean, a lot of people go out even earlier than now, a couple months earlier than now.
Yeah.
And do their walking, do their scouting, see. I mean, they'll even do it with some snow on the ground to try and
Yeah,
find
like right
out.
after the season.
Yeah, I'm still green to all that too.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll go out like just this year. I'm learning more about getting out early and putting the boots on the ground, as everyone likes to say, and figuring out where deer are bedding, and trying to figure out if you're next to a bedding area, try and figure out what is growing around there. Try and figure out, are there old scrapes, are there old rubs, and just see the current travel, even size of deer tracks, stuff like that. So for you this year, with having a couple trail cameras out, dropping the pins where you think they might be, but then the big thing is like getting in there and taking a walk around and figuring out, is there as much deer traffic as you are comfortable with taking, like sitting on?
Right.
Or is there not? Is there buck sign? Is there not buck sign? Because it might be the quote unquote perfect scenario, the perfect spot, looks great. I hunted a lot of those growing up. It just looked like a good deer spot. But there wasn't the deer sign that now I know needs to be there in order to probably kill a nice buck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I get excited about like finding anything buck related, and then I'll like,
Yeah.
but I don't have time to like go in time after time, and when I do go in, it's usually during the season. And so, for example, where I did end up killing that 8-pointer, that you had kind of broken down the topography, and we're like, all right, this is where we think that they would want to bed. And I didn't even get 15 yards, 20 yards into the woods before I started seeing just a ton of buck sign. And so I was like, all right, I'm stopping here. I'm not going to go any deeper, and I'm just going to sit off this like 40 yards off their bed and just see what I see. It was a pretty early season still, and that's when I saw I think it was 4 bucks in that one night. where I ended up actually killing the 8-pointer because I didn't go back unless like the wind was perfect, everything was perfect. I only sat there a handful of times throughout the whole year.
Well, the upside to like in-season scouting is that's current information. You can get as much, deer beds, deer sign, all these different things, but those rubs could have been made during the rut, or those scrapes could have been made during the rut, and they're being made at night, and you're 400 yards from where that buck beds or whatever. And then you come into season and all that stuff's got snow on it. And now you've got, like, I've seen travel routes like that are during the winter.
Yeah.
They're like 2 foot wide and they're just packed down, 3 foot of snow everywhere. And that's just packed down. You walk on it like it's pavement.
Yeah.
And then you put a trail camera there, it changes over to spring and there's no deer right there, because they're just using it during winter.
Yeah.
So like current information, and I know like I've been listening to some podcasts.
Oh, what?
Yes. I try to learn. I try to learn. And like some guys, they're just in season scouting. And that has huge advantages, but I think it's beneficial if you have the time, and a lot of it comes down to time. It's beneficial like early season, late season. For instance, I jumped a buck last year out of a bed a couple hours before I actually tagged out. It's a big, wide buck that I knew he was in this valley, but I didn't know where he was bedding.
Yeah.
Well, I jumped him, and then I was like, oh, crap, and I sat that stand, and I ended up shooting my buck that I got last year. But then I went back down in there scouting again this spring, in the same exact spot I jumped that buck. There was a fresh buck bed that had been, you can tell, I mean, he's probably been bedding there a few years. Grass is dead. All the new sprouted grass that was in that bed is all laid down. So that bed is still being used. So that's current information that I now have for this year.
Yeah.
And I'm going to hunt off of that bed like he's bedding there.
Yeah.
So it's relevant now.
Yep.
In the spring as it would be this fall, because I jumped him out of it last winter.
Yeah.
So that's how that is beneficial. I wouldn't have gone in there during rut or late season because I wouldn't want to push him out of there. But since I went there in the spring, that buck bed is still there, so that deer is still there.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. And I think that's like last year, and I think when we talked to the first time when you were on, the idea of like that is every buck is a potential monster buck, right? And so I know for me on that same travel corridor, it was like there's a 4-pointer and a 6-pointer that were there last year, and I left my camera out there. It's still out there now, and there's little did I know, like when I was there early season, it was just that there was the beds around and just the topography kind of was lending itself to a travel corridor. And then the morning I shot that buck, I didn't know it until the light came up, but there was actually a scrape like 15 yards away from me, right where but I didn't know it was there earlier in the season. And so like having that current information, and even that trail camera, I've been out there year long now, basically, I'll be able to get a lot of good intel. But it's kind of like that area in my mind, outside of seeing something new, is going to be like, okay, let this area basically mature, if that makes sense. Because it seemed like there's very little disturbance outside of me being back there. And so now it's like trying to find that new area, that new spot that it's going to produce for this year.
Yep. And I mean, that's just one thing. You just got to keep track of that kind of stuff. Like I didn't do that starting out, and I had a bunch of small bucks on trail camera here and there, but I think keeping track of that and then going back, even if you got a bunch of small bucks that may not be good even for a couple years, I mean, maybe in the next year you don't want to go back and hit it. Maybe you want to just leave it alone. Go back 2 years later, see if those bucks are still in the area, or at least one, and see what size they are. Because, one of them is probably bound to stay in the area, I would think.
Yeah, hunting around here too in Wisconsin is, big woods hunting. What I used to do is take as many trails cameras as I had, and I'd kind of scatter them around until I found a buck. You kind of want to try to find a buck is in the area, and then maybe focus on that area. So I'd put a few cameras out, and I remember one time I was hunting. This is kind of just a funny story, and probably happened to you guys before, but I'm hunting and I'm walking around, like you say, you're trying to find the biggest trail you possibly can, throw up a camera on there, see if you can catch a big buck. You throw it up, leave it for a few weeks, a month, whatever it takes, and you go back and check it. Well, I put a trail camera up. I come back 3 weeks later, and the trail camera's turned around, like facing away from the trail. I'm like, oh, who's touching my trail camera? I'm so mad.
Yeah.
I'm like, man, who would do that to a trail? What kind of hunter? And if you hunters are listening, don't do that. Don't take people's cameras. It makes them mad. But anyway, I was really mad. I'm like, man, I lost like 3 weeks of time and material on this. So I'm like, I got to follow this trail, see what's going on.
Yeah.
I literally walk over the hill, and there's a big flute plot, big deer stand, bait pile, cameras. I'm like, okay, yeah. I just kind of accidentally stumbled on this guy's area and put a camera. And then I kind of felt like a jerk. I'm like, well, I didn't know, because you try to, as little impact as you possibly can. But
Yeah.
anyway, has that ever happened to you guys? Trail cameras stolen, turned around? Yeah, come on.
I would have set up on that.
Oh,
That
dude.
was public.
It was public, but at the same time, I'm like, I wouldn't want somebody coming into my.
That is
Yeah.
a really interesting thing, because I remember. Okay, so I just get into archery season, and I'm in the Billings Park area, right, where it's
Where
super
nobody
high pressure.
hunts, yeah.
Where everybody hunts, right? But I didn't realize, like, it's my first time bow hunting within city limits.
The big woods.
And I'm out there. No, I'm scouting, and I'm seeing like all this traffic and stuff. And I run into like 2 or 3 blinds, and it's out of season where they're allowed to have them up. And I'm like, just such a doobie. I'm calling the DNR because I'm like, is there anything you guys do? He's like, there's everybody leaves their stands up. There's thousands of stands up. There's nothing we're gonna do about that. And I was like, oh.
It's just, you got to chill. It's just,
Yeah, well, the dude's he's got like this huge chain wrapped around his stand. I mean, okay, here's a good question. Okay, so if you guys are out public land and you see a stand and you know it's illegal to have it up there, what do you consider that stand at that point, or what
I leave it alone, because you know what, America, I hate when people touch my stuff. I leave it alone. It's like, you know what, maybe they're not supposed to, but I've done it before. It's like, I just leave it and go. Sure, hey, if you want to set up next to it, go for it. He's not sitting there, go for it, but I don't touch it.
Dusty's chiming in.
My only thought, if it's nicer than the current one I have, I'm swapping it. I'm trading.
Oh my god.
Well, I got another funny story. Talking about public land setting up, down in Kentucky.
Yeah.
I'd hunted the area before, a couple of years already, and I knew the spot I wanted to go to. The deer are coming out. It's a food source. It's late season. It's December. It's cold. I know they're going to be coming on the food source. I get off work, jump in the truck, drive over there. I'm like, yeah, I got just a couple hours left, So I'm kind of in a hurry already. Grab my stand, do a quick hang and hunt. I know exactly the area I'm going to. I walk in. I'm trying to set high up in this tree. I go through a lot of work. I'm sweating. I'm working hard. I get this stand just about ready to put up. I go back down to the bottom of the tree to grab my bow and hoist everything up. I get down to the bottom, and I kind of finally just take a minute to relax and look around my surroundings. There's a dude in a tree 20 yards away. Watched me for the last 20 minutes putting up a deer stand. And I kind of look at him, and he's looking at me, and I'm like, I wave him like, hey, I didn't see you there. He's like, oh, I thought you saw me like when you came up here and you're just being a jerk. I'm like, dude, you should have said something, because I'm like, no, I wouldn't set up on you, like straight up 20 yards away. I felt like an idiot the
so
whole
bad.
time, but it happens. It's public land. You just got to have grace for those people. And I've done it, offended other people. I'm sure they'll do it to me, but it's like, is what it is,
Hey, dude, seen any good bucks though?
It was so awkward, because I'm like, hey, yeah, so I'm just going to take this down real quick. But yeah, it's good area, I see him coming out, like trying to give him tips. I'm like, I'm just out of here. I'm done. This is stupid.
So bad. I've heard people make the argument that essentially people are littering in the woods if it's outside of hunting season. So they're like, oh, I'm taking trash out of the woods. It's not illegal for me to take it because it's illegally there.
Sounds like a non-hunter.
No, he's a hunter. He's a hunter.
No,
Yeah,
it wasn't.
No.
Not in my book.
I wouldn't take one, but I always like to make faces in the trail cameras when I walk by. If I
I
happen,
do that.
if I happen to catch one, I'm like,
You have to. You have to,
yeah. Everybody appreciates that. One thing that we were talking about before we came in here out in the parking lot. Oh, who's Seth gritting his teeth? Seth, why don't you open up about what we were talking about out in the parking lot? Any ideas?
We talked about a lot of stuff.
We did. I think a part of it, we all kind of agreed, like the subjectivity of what makes a hunt valuable, or what makes it like really rewarding, or just like the different types of people that are hunting and not wanting to like cause a bunch of division, but kind of talking maybe a little bit about some of the positives that can come from, let's say, what we consider the full experience. Would that be fair to say? Fair. Okay. So are you following my line of thought as far as like which direction we're working in here?
I feel kind of fenced in on this one.
All right. Oh, That was good. That was good. But no, we do want to be careful to talk. We're talking about deer farming and high fence and some of the positive aspects of that, and not wanting to cause division and have like basically it turn into some trash talk thing, right? We want like even last week we had Cade Mush on, and we heard a lot. I know for me, like I heard a lot of new stuff that I had not heard before, and that's part of why we want him on, just to get a different perspective on it. But I thought it'd be cool to just kind of go into maybe the different aspects without just ripping one down to raise one up, if that kind of makes sense. Because I had some interesting conversations about people who had been guiding for people like bear hunting, and the people where they're like building houses around the idea of a 200-inch deer that they're just going to pay to put up. Like for me, that's like, what are they missing out on when that's kind of their reality?
Well, I think like anything in life, like the harder you have to work for something and the more you go through to get there, and you end up succeeding off of your like the merits of the work you put in, you know, that creates value, whether it's like a big buck or a small buck. If you put in like the time, the energy, and you know, I mean, it even comes down to missing out on stuff because you're out hunting, you know, that like creates value in what you end up with at the end of the year. So I think maybe people could be missing out on the value you get from like, you know, maybe being a little miserable, or maybe getting to spend time outdoors, getting exercise. Maybe it's, you know, when you get out to your trail camera and you're going to pull that SD card and you're like, come on, be a giant in here. There's not a giant, over and over and over again. And then you end up finding a giant, and you sit in front of your laptop and you're like, finally.
I'm waiting for that day still.
Right. And I think that's something that's fun that you get to experience. And if you're not doing that yourself, like obviously you don't get to experience it. So there's like work you put in, there's money invested, there's time invested, and you know, being out there in the areas where you hunt and getting to know the topography of it all, and getting, you know, to know like even when you pull up there, are there deer out in the field, are there not, where are you going to come in from? It's, you know, like we were talking about, to each their own. Like there's no reason that you gotta knock down another thing. It's all about what we want out of it. But
right.
But the real thing about it in my mind is like, when you put in all that work, it just seems so rewarding. Like there's little bits of highs that you get from things working out. Like I set up that stand, I wasn't sure if it was gonna work out. Holy cow, it worked out.
Yeah.
And it's like, I did that. And that's that confidence that a guy gets over years of doing it, is I'm going to set it here, or I'm going to set it there. And here are the reasons why I'm putting this stand here. Here are the reasons why I'm not going into this area. And then you go, oh, I actually did it. And I
Right.
I got that deer because I didn't go in there. I got that deer because I set up here. And even growing up hunting with people, they give you like, oh, this is a good area, that's a good area, or here's a stand, you know, and you sit it. And I think when you do it all yourself, start to finish, there's something extremely gratifying about that.
Yeah, I think that would be accurate. And like even like this is even outside of like high fence hunting. It was just part of the conversation. Like Reuben, you had mentioned that you had what was it, that 2 day? You were 2 days into the season, and you felt like you kind of stumbled upon it. Yeah. So to share a little bit about that, and then maybe after you're done with that, would you say that feels as, would you take a smaller buck with all the hard work maybe invested, where you felt like you figured it out over that? You maybe just share like a little bit about that story and how that unfolded.
Oh boy. So, stumbled out on my buck second day of the season. Didn't have him on trail camera. I didn't have all the rewards of putting it all together, finding him on trail camera, putting a plan of action together, and finally just kind of zeroing in on a buck, which is really rewarding and everything. I was still proud of the deer. I was glad I shot him. He's a big buck and stuff. And, but just was like, boom, hunting season's kind of done, you know, now I'm just got a doe tags in my pocket for the rest of the year. So yeah, like Seth said, a lot of the reward is in the chase of it. Whether, you know, High fence hunt, great. I'm glad they exist. A lot of people do them. Same thing with guided hunts. You go to a guided hunt in Iowa and they set you up in a stand. You're kind of getting the same thing essentially as a high fence hunt, maybe where you're not putting in all the work yourself. You're just going there and paying for it, and that's great. But if I did that, first of all, I can't afford to do that. But if I did that and I called Seth and was like, dude, I shot a 190-inch buck on, whether it be guided or high fence, he'd be like, cool, dude, but
as Seth puts the thumbs down.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a reward about doing a lot of part of the hunting, and obviously the way we grew up hunting, being independent ourselves, we put in all the work ourselves and stuff. So yeah, I'm glad it's there for people. But for us, it's always been just putting the work ourselves and making it happen.
One thing that I've noticed, like even when we were talking before we started recording, it seemed like between you two there was a real sense of we'll call it accountability.
Oh, it's always been competition, man. He and I, from the time we were 12 years old, sitting in the stand together, blowing the call through our nose, trying not to laugh. I mean, it's been like,
dude.
Yeah, we hold each other accountable.
He's been better
heavily.
at everything with very little effort, but he is not better at bow hunting.
Let's just say this: we
that can
like
be
hang out so good.
recorded on
We
the
literally married sisters just so we could be brother-in-law, so we could continue this the rest of our lives.
Dude, he's recording this.
Oh, I know.
Yes. That's awesome.
It was planned. It's a true story.
What are the chances?
Yeah. Oh,
Pretty
weird.
good.
Well, you guys are from Superior, so it's not that hard.
Oh, my, he's always taking shots. He's always taking shots. Always. No, but I think that's actually, I thought that was a pretty interesting aspect, because for Dusty and I, like, we're so early on where there's like no big buck under the belt by any means. I mean, we barely have what we would call a big buck under the belt for trail cameras, let alone actually on the ground and like,
the competition for us starts, like, he sends me a trail camera picture. I'm like, oh man, I gotta get a trail camera. I mean, the competition, it's all year. I mean, growing up, like, if he shot a big buck early in the season, Kate as well. We all grew up hunting together. Quinn and all those guys over there. If one of them shot a buck, that did play with your standard a little bit, because you're like, okay, I can't really settle for that.
Are you sure Kate and Quinn's would still go with your standards?
Oh. Yeah, it was growing up. It was always the same. Like they'd come up with stories and they'd shoot a buck, and yeah.
So that ended up, sorry, that is, with what you guys said earlier with the tranquilizer.
That's a good idea. That was just a straight up good idea, I'm telling you.
Yeah, they were thinking about tranquilizing one of the nice bucks on the farm and just getting some Instagram photos.
Yeah, we were at the farm earlier today with Cade, and we're like, hey man, just shoot it with a tranq. Let us pose in front of it with our bow and arrow. I mean, come on, man.
Hey, you could put one of your leftover tags on it, Reuben.
Ooh, shots fired. Oh my
That
goodness.
hurts actually a little bit. I gotta cry here.
Yeah, I'm wondering at what point Dustin and I will end up being more competitive, because at this point right now we're both like helping each other out and real encouraging, and then you guys are just like, it's just not big enough, man.
We are too, kind of.
Encouraging and like, you better not quit, because here's what I have.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can call it good.
Say, well, it's the Northland, so anytime it's over like 70 degrees, we're all melting and dying up here.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So, all right, well, we do appreciate everybody for tuning in and listening. Dusty, where can they find us?
You can find us on iTunes, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Podbean, and a couple other places I still can't remember.
All the links are in the bios, in the descriptions, and you can find us there. So
Please check us out. Give us a like. Give us a dislike. Let us know. We don't really care.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for tuning in. Peace out.
Peace.